All right, so in this video, we will be going over this scene or short film planning form. So this is an example that I did, and again, we're going to go over these parts. So looking at it from first glance, and actually, I'm just going to go in order. So of course, you have your name and everything. I put a fake name, but you have your name and everything in there. Then you have your scene or short film title. For this one, I was actually able to, this was actually the first thing that I came up with was the ultimatum. So there we go. And actually, the good thing is that throughout the course of me creating this, I didn't have to change that. That's not, I would say, as normal for some people, but, and also for me, that's not as normal sometimes whenever I write. But I was able to keep that. So the next thing is, and also with that, you may come up with the title at the beginning and it may change towards the end, or you may leave it anonymous at first and then towards the end, after you've written all of this and thought about it and everything, then you're like, okay, this is the perfect title for it, and then you'll type that in. But you do have to have a title for this. So next up, we have the scene or short film genre. So of course I had these examples of genres that you could have, like a comedy, drama, horror, or suspense. So I chose suspense for this one. And actually, I think the process is interesting because at first I started off with comedy, and then I was like, all right, well, as I was coming up with this idea and just typing stuff, I was like, all right, this sounds more suspenseful. But then, really, towards the end, what I'm thinking about making this a suspenseful comedy. And I say that because, and again, we're going to read this shortly, we're going to dig into it shortly. But as I was writing it, there's certain parts that could be funny, and it may not seem as funny on here, but the humor will come in whenever I start writing it. Because you got characters that are saying things and you have characters that are doing things, and it's about the way they say it, in conjunction with how they do it, and that timing and everything is what can allow for some humorous moments. So with that said, that's part of the work that I have ahead of me. So I'm going to make this a little bigger so we can focus on one page at a time. So here we go. So next up, what I have is my full description slash explanation of scene or short film. So the reason why, and this, it may help a lot of people, is that one problem that students made me aware of is that it was kind of hard to put all 5 of those steps of story structure into one scene. So what I've opened it up to is, instead of just saying that I'm just going to have you write a scene, or that you're just planning for a scene, I've opened it up to you planning for a short film. So with that, a short film can have a few different scenes in it. So with that said, if it was hard for you to put everything in one, you can really make as many scenes as you want. So with that said, that is the adjustment that has been made. So if that helps you out, take advantage of it. And if you're that person where you're like, well, it all worked for my scene, I got everything in there, so do I have to start all over and add some more stuff and add some more scenes? No. If you have yours perfected and it's good and you like it, then you are done. So at least at this point, for this phase in this process. So for my short film called The Ultimatum, here is what happens. So with this part, really, it'd probably be better for you to read this. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. I'll probably end up reading the whole thing. But with that said, and actually, you know what? I'm going to give you 2 options in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, of course, read it on your own and then look at the next part of this video, if that applies to you. There's some people that may want me to read it, so I'm going to read that. So again, if you're the person that's already read it or doesn't want to hear me read it, then just go on to the next part, fast forward, and you'll get what you need. But if you want me to read this through, then that's fine as well. All right. But also, before I even read it, what I want you to understand is that the amount of thought that goes into this. So as I'm writing this, I'm thinking about all of these steps: inciting incident, progressive complications, crisis, climax, and resolution. So again, as I'm writing it, because again, I just started typing and trying to figure out ideas and everything. But as I was writing it, I was thinking about those 5 steps to story structure, because I'm going to end up having to explain what that is, or at least having to highlight what that is later on. So I might as well include it, because the very thing that you don't want to do is do all of this writing and explain everything in this story, and then you don't have any of these, or at least if you don't have all of them or most of them, then that's going to be an issue when you get down to this, where it's like, all right, what's the crisis? Dang, there was no crisis. You know what I mean? So with that said, you want to be thinking about all of these and what they look like as you're going through this, and as you're typing out what happens from beginning to end in this scene or short film. So here we go. So now I'm going to start reading it. As I've already said, I have my disclaimer. So if you want to read it on your own, or if you've already read it on your own, then you can move on to the next part. And if you want to read it on your own, do that. And if you're like, I want to stay on pace with you, Mr. Daniels, and get it the way that you're getting it, and get all of those details, then stay tuned, and we're going to read it right now. So here we go. So my main character is Michael. So reads as this: Michael is having trouble paying his dinner bill, and this friendly man comes out of nowhere and pays for his meal. The friendly man then puts an envelope by him and walks off. Mike tries to give the envelope back to the man, but the man urges him to open it as he walks away. When he opens the envelope, he sees a set of instructions. The first request on the sheet was that the envelope mandated that Mike call this number. So anyway, Mike, he ends up calling the number. And so then the guy picks up at his table, and I'm going to just kind of paraphrase off of what I remember from writing. So Mike calls this number. The other guy, that just walked off, that paid for his meal, picks up, and so they have a little bit of a conversation on there, and pretty much he lets Mike know that that now, based off of him giving him his phone number that way, by calling the man, he knows exactly where he lives. And so of course that adds a little danger to it. And so then from there, the guy, he also asks a weird request of Mike. He says, all right, I want you to rub your index finger on the bottom portion of that this sheet that you're reading off of, pretty much, with all of these instructions. And so once he does that, we go down to Mike. Finally, so then the guy hangs up, and then Mike, of course, walks over to him to confront him about it with the envelope, because again, he wants to give the man his money back, because he's kind of weirded out. He's like, man, you adding all of this extra in there. I don't need all of that. Make me feel some type of way. But the man refuses, and he snatches the sheet and envelope from Michael and then starts to exit. So then, of course, Michael, he's really persistent about trying to give him this money back, because he's like, is something wrong, or whatever. And he's like, he really just wants to go back to normal, which is to just pay for his meal, no matter how taxing that may be on his pockets, and go on. So then what happens is Michael ends up following him out to his car, and then Mike, he's so gung-ho about making sure that this guy gets this money back, that he is gutsy enough to get in his car, trying to make it seem like, all right, I'm not leaving until you take this money back. So then what happens is the guy drives off with Michael in the car, and he starts to explain to Mike that he's in debt now, of course, to him, and that there's nothing that Michael can do to get out of it, and he has his DNA that's been transmitted on that paper. So he's gonna be doing some crazy stuff with this DNA. So then at this point, Mike, he's weirded out. He tries to get out of the car, but of course the car door won't open because it's locked. It's got a special lock on it. So then after that, he tries to harm the man that's driving, but the man stops him. So with that, he's probably gonna hit him, punch him, do something to make him be like, "Dang, that was a hard hit. I need to stop trying to resist this man because he's really really strong, and I don't have a chance." So then, the man urges Michael, of course, to stop resisting and make the best out of this situation. So then Mike starts crying and he takes out his phone because he's thinking, all right, I'll just, oh no, let me see, I missed the detail. Oh, so Mike also tried to call the police, but of course, there's this cellular blocker that's on the car to where it blocks all cellular signals from going out. So, of course, Mike can't get service to call the police. And like I said, he started crying. And then from that point, what he did is he was looking at old pictures that he had in his phone and screenshots and everything. And he came upon this riddle from Facebook that was hard, maybe for like him and his friends to answer, whoever to answer. And so then what he did is he gave the driver an ultimatum. He said, "Well, I have this riddle. So if you answer this riddle correctly, then you can have not only me as a slave, but the addition to that would be my girlfriend because or his girlfriend because actually one detail that's left out that I'm gonna have to work out is that Mike was eating with his girlfriend. So she's still at that restaurant. So pretty much at that point, the guy's a little hesitant, and he's like, "All right, I'll do it, because again, it's an extra slave." So with that said, what happens is the guy asks him, "So Mike, how many chances do I have to get it right?" Mike says 3. So with that said, the guy that's driving, he answers or he tries to solve the riddle the first time and he fails. He tries to do it again and he fails. And so then at that point he gets a little frustrated and then he's like, okay, I'll just turn off this cellular blocker. So he does that in the car. And then while he's driving, he gets on his phone and then he starts he's like, all right, I'm gonna just look this up and Google it for this last try. And so then as he's doing that, Mike, he's like, oh, that's not fair, all this other stuff. But what happens is throughout all of that, as the driver, is looking for this riddle, for the answer to this riddle, you have the police that comes up kind of behind him or comes up beside him or wherever and catches him on his phone. So then they end up pulling him over. So then at this point, he's just gotten pulled over, and then after that, he gets pulled over before he could read the answer to the riddle to get it right, to have both Mike and his girlfriend as a slave. So then what happens is, as the police is stopping him and all of that stuff and talking to him, you have Mike that starts blurting out some crazy stuff, like he's just being reckless to the point where he does it so much even after being told to stop by the police officer, and after the other guy in the car says, hey, chill, 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 he just goes to the ninth power, and then the cop ends up arresting him. So then the way the story ends is that you have Mike happily in jail because he's like, man, I've escaped this crazy guy. I'm scot-free even though I'm in jail. And then on the other end, what you have is see, I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. So yeah, because he's definitely relieved that he's not any longer in the presence of this crazy guy. But then we have another thing that'll be revealed in the resolution, and I'll kind of go to that one first just because it's on my mind. That can kind of spiral into the next thing that I'd want to create for this if I wanted to really make a TV series. We have, of course, like I said, Mike, he's sitting happily in jail. But on the other end, somewhere, his girlfriend is tied up in a trunk as the trunk is closing. So imagine that. His girlfriend is, going to be MIA now, so imagine that and how that would fuel him to be tied back in with this guy that he now owes money when he thought that he was scot free. So there you go. So that is an explanation of the story. So, or the short film. So now this is the next thing. So we have how the scene begins, or how the short film begins. So with that, of course, since I have all of this up here, I have a great reference tool. So with that, I put Michael asked the waiter for the check so that he can pay for the food that he ordered. So of course, with that, that would be the first part of the scene. He pays for that. And I mean, with writing, what we often say is that writing is rewriting. So with that, thinking back on it now, I would think that maybe his girlfriend and him have a conversation, and then it leads to paying for whatever bill, or maybe they got something going on, or or whatever. Maybe it's some tension, or whatever. It could be a host of things that lead up to him asking for that check, which ultimately leads to what I'll describe in a few seconds as the inciting incident. But anyway, for right now, I put down that the scene starts or begins with Michael asking the waiter for the check so he can pay for the food that he ordered. All right, so then how the scene ends. The scene ends with Michael sitting down in a jail cell smiling. And also one thing that I could add is while his girlfriend is getting kidnapped. So that's something that I kind of added towards the end just to give it a little extra interest, if you will. But yep, that's how it ends. So now we're at the 5 steps of story structure. So the first one, inciting incident. So again, this is the event that changes the norm of the main character. Right? From this point on, nothing else is normal, and this really that's it. There's nothing else to explain about that. So anyway, here we go. The inciting incident. The friendly guy pays for Michael's meal, and he hands Michael an envelope as he walks back to his table. So again, at that point, of course, that's clearly the inciting incident that changes things. And also, I was thinking about this as I was writing it, but that is the moment that changes everything for this particular short film, because at that point, throughout this whole thing, one of his main goals is to give that money back because of the consequences that he learned of, from accepting that money. So again, that is the inciting incident because that changes Mike's norm really forever. So next up, we got the progressive complications. So hopefully I got all of these. And again, as I was saying, this is a great reference tool because as you look back at what you put down and you read over it, all of this stuff is going to be in there if you put it in there. So with that said, here we go. So the first complication was, of course, Mike trying to give the envelope back, but the man refuses. Then Michael calls the guy, and they end up getting information on where he lives. So that it also sucked to have that phone to make that phone call, to be naive, but then it was really a setup because now he's got your whereabouts, like that type of information. So that's another complication that ties you even closer to this guy that you just that just came out of nowhere to pay for your meal. So then third complication is the guy snatches the envelope and document that Michael's fingerprint is on as he starts to leave the restaurant. And of course, Michael follows him because let me see where I was at. Because he still wants to pay the money back. So with that one, and I could do a better job of wording that, but that is a complication because now Mike is working harder to convince this guy, no, you need to take this money back. to the point of where he's gonna follow him. So then Michael gets in the man's car, and he pretty soon learns that he's trapped. So I think that's a great complication to just pile up on him, because you just fell into this trap this guy orchestrated for you. And so now the fifth one, Michael tries to call the police, but the cellular blocker is on. Yep. So yeah, they have a cellular blocker on the car that prevents those cellular signals from going outside of the car. So with that said, he's pretty much, helpless. So now we have this crisis moment where Michael cries while looking through his phone, and then of course he finds that riddle, and then he decides to present this ultimatum. So then we have the climax. At this point, this is where the guy that's driving accepts it. And he's like, all right, they already agreed to all those terms, but he starts, doing his thing with trying to trying to solve the riddle. And with that part, that is the climax, because again, at that point, that is the face off between him and Michael. Because again, there's some competition there. So with that said, you have the riddle portion of it, where the guy eventually tries to use Facebook, ultimately until the policeman comes in this picture. But even at that, they're still going at it, because the guy wins if he's able to leave with Michael in his car, but Michael wins ultimately because he gets taken out of the car by being arrested. So and then the resolution, of course, which shows the ending, as well as how people end up in the scene after this climax has taken place. And with that, you got Michael sitting happy in jail, smiling and whatnot. But then on the other hand, this is kind of the precursor into the next short film, or if this was a TV series, the next episode would be his girlfriend being tied up in a trunk, and then the trunk closing. Because at that point, like, oh wow, it's his girlfriend, she's in danger, and it makes you want to watch the next episode. So there we go. That is a breakdown of my example. I hope this helps. Again, my last minute tips on it are definitely the part that you can't skip at all. You can't skip any of this, but the main part that you can't skip at all, that is going to help you the most, is filling out this full description / explanation of the scene. If you do that, you really pretty much have everything there. But the other way to guarantee that is, as you write this full explanation of the scene or the short film, what you got to make sure that you do is that you think about the inciting incident and progressive complications, crisis, climax, and resolution. You have to think about all of those steps to story structure as you write it, because it would suck to just be writing, or in your case, typing, and then you get to the end of it and you're like, all right, I'm done. But then once you read back over, you're like, wait a minute, there's no inciting incident, or there's no crisis, there's no complications. You know what I mean? So with that said, you have to make sure that you are incorporating all of those parts in it as you write it, so that you don't get that terrible surprise at the end to be like, man, I don't have this, I don't have that, so now I gotta go back and fix that now. Because again, if you don't write it in there, then again, it's not gonna make sense to, like, you're not gonna know what to put for these moments down here, for the 5 steps, if you don't have that figured out. So with that said, those are my tips. Also, I've extended this until Sunday, so if you need that extra time, take advantage of it. But with that said, that is how you do it. So, and also at this point, if you have any other questions, let me know. I'll be answering my email as soon as possible if you have any questions. But yeah, just let me know and we'll take it from there. So with that said, I hope this helps, and let's get it done. Have a good day.